Hey everyone, I just got done doing a 5.3 swap in my 89 240SX, and I did it on the cheap, and I'm kind of making this video just to let everyone know like how I did it, like what parts I went with, approximate cost of things and such like that. I never really found like a guide as comprehensive as what I want to let you guys know. I actually have an Excel sheet that I made of pretty much everything that went into this swap, and if you can see that total, it's about $36.91 and change, so a little under $3,700 from not having anything related to a V8 in this car to having it running and driving and drifting and what have you. So the motor is a 5.3 out of a 2001 Suburban, and it's just something on Craigslist that I picked up. It came with the ECU and the harness for that price, so that was cool that I already got those things. Let's see, so I went with the hooker swap headers. That could have been done cheaper. I could have like got some block huggers or something and done the exhaust myself, but I wanted to get some headers that I wouldn't need to change in the future for my future power goals, so I just went with these. Brian Broberg motor mounts, they're pretty awesome. They're 1/4-inch steel. However, if you use the hooker headers, you've got to trim the motor mounts a little bit. KA radiator, I actually traded an SR radiator for it, so I didn't have to spend any money there. And I made this little bracket right here, so it's in there nice and tight. Power steering cooler. Okay, so down there you can kind of see the custom power steering line that I made. Get some light down there. That was $40 just at your local hydraulics shop. I originally went with Russell PowerFlex hose and AN fittings. However, if you use that hose, the outside diameter of that Russell PowerFlex hose is too small for regular AN fittings. It'll just pop out. If you want to go with that hose, I suggest using the actual Russell specific PowerFlex AN fittings, or you can just go to your hydraulic shop and say, hey, I need a 26-inch line made, or however long you want it. This one's 26 end to end. That fitting right there, that blue fitting, in the pump is M16 by 1.5 O-ring, as well as these fittings down here. Let's see, the return side on the right is also M16 by 1.5. The pressure side on the left is M14 by 1.5. And it's 3/8 return going into that cooler that you saw there. Left the truck intake on because you don't need a car intake for it to work, obviously. I got this 4-inch mandrel bent aluminum piece off of eBay. I got these couplers off of eBay. This is a brand new MAF I got for like $30 or something. Radiator hose, you can just go to your local parts store and say, hey guys, I need to go in the back and look at your preformed hoses, and you should just be able to run back there, and you can pick out a few sections of hose to make it work for what you need. This is my little adapter for a water temperature sender, as well as the steam ports coming from over in there. I don't think you can see it, but another thing, this is the truck water pump. It's not a car water pump, but what I did was I cut off the outlet about right here. I left about 1 inch of metal outlet, and then that allowed me to use a tight radius 90 hose right there, which really helps. As for the rest of the exhaust, the hooker headers have 3-inch collectors, so I just welded on some 3-inch V-band. And then a few inches after the V-band off the header is a flex section in the exhaust. I like having those in there in case there are any vibrations. You're not trying to crack your exhaust welds or crack your exhaust manifolds or anything like that. So it's dual 3-inch, and then back to maybe right here on the car, I don't know. I made a custom Y, and then it goes to single 4-inch. Let me see if you can get down there and see that. So there's the 4-inch. Hopefully you can kind of see that. I don't know. But it's dual 3 back to single 4. Sounds awesome. May not look the best, but it's under the car. No one looks at it anyways. So another thing that I did was, this is the back of the motor. There's the firewall. This is where the stock oil pressure sending unit goes. That little fitting right there. I didn't really want to just get an adapter and put my aftermarket oil pressure sender there. I wanted to be able to get to it easily in the future if I ever needed to. So what I did was I took the stock oil pressure sending unit, I broke the plastic piece off of it, I cleaned all the crap out of there. There was like some film or glue or something in there. And then I welded on that bolt, the head you can see, and then I drilled and tapped it for 1/8 MPT. So then I just got an 1/8 MPT to 3AN fitting, and then I got a 16-inch long line, 90 degree at this end and straight at the other end, and that allowed me to put my aftermarket oil pressure sender right there. So it's very easy to get to, if I ever need to in the future or whatever. So that's something I did that while the motor was still out. So now I won't have to try to like squeeze back there to get my oil pressure sender. I don't know about the actual LS motors like Camaro and Firebird and Corvette and all that crap. But I know these truck motors, I'm pretty sure before 2006, they do not use the oil pressure sender, into the ECU to start the motor. It's pretty much just the dummy light for your dash. So I took it out and I, depinned that from the ECU as well, and I mean, it starts up fine, it runs great. So another thing that I was actually pretty excited about for this swap was these fans. These fans came off my SR. They're derail. I forget like what model number or anything, but they're slightly wider than the 240 frame, but all you got to do is notch the bottom. If you can see that right there, it's actually notched in maybe 3/4 of an inch, and I did that on both sides, and then it'll fit in there just fine. Let's see. So you can see it's kind of notched up there. And also, it barely clears the power steering pump pulley. It's about an inch clearance, and it also kind of barely clears the water pump pulley, but hey, it clears, so I'm not too worried about it. This throttle cable is actually a single cam KA throttle cable. Definitely look for one of these, even if you're doing an LS swap, not just the truck motor, but it leaves a lot of exposed cable right here, so it gives you plenty of distance between this and the end of this, because I know some buddies of mine are using the dual cam cable, and it's a lot shorter cable, so it puts this end like right here, and it almost does hit, so they have clearance issues. But this is a single cam KA. It's not modified. I didn't cut the sheath and move this back or anything. I didn't cut the end of this, and then I just made this bracket again with that welder and some scrap metal I had lying around. So look for a single cam KA throttle cable. So for fuel, I could have used the stock truck fuel rails. They probably would have worked fine. I would have had a pressure and return fitting over here somewhere with the built-in fuel pressure regulator, and that's cool and all, but I didn't really like them. They're plastic, they're big, they're ugly, whatever. So I picked up this AN fuel kit. It's actually for an LS, and I made these brackets myself with just some aluminum flat bar. You can see I actually drilled and tapped the fuel rail down here for this screw, M6 by 1.0, just like a standard 240SX screw. But the injectors are the same angle as an LS, so truck and LS have like the same injector angle and positioning, so that worked out really well. And I have this AN line, let me focus here, I have this AN line right here going under the manifold, and then over to the other side right there, you can see it. So it's coming up from under the manifold on the bottom left and going into the fuel rail on the right, which again has the same bracketry, and then it's capped off right there at the end of the fuel rail. So for fuel feed, it's coming from right here, if you can see right there, and then it's just going down and then following the frame of the car all the way back. You can kind of see there's a clamp right there. There's actually, it changes from AN hose to just rubber hose. I'll probably get around to changing it to full AN eventually, but just to get it running, you don't really need that. But it is 3/8, so I actually took out all of the stock plumbing for the fuel and everything. The only stock line that's still left along the frame is the brake line. For the master cylinder, picked up a 3/4 inch Willwood, pretty much like the standard cylinder on all LS 240 swaps, you know. And to mount it is a rigid racing mounting bracket, adapter bracket, and it's really nice, really simple. You just bolt the master cylinder to the bracket. You can see that nut on the top and bottom, and then it bolts right into the stock spot. I got these couple fittings right here, 3/8 24 banjo bolt, and then a 3/8 to 3AN banjo, and then this line right here just goes down to the transmission into the slave cylinder. Now the next big item, the transmission. That's actually an NV3500 from an S10. It's not a T56. You have to get the transmission from the 4.3 liter S10, and I think it's 96 and newer, because those are the internally slaved transmissions, and that's what you need. The 4-cylinder S10 transmissions are completely different, and they won't work at all. But this transmission actually bolts right up. I think it just misses one mounting hole on the passenger side or something. But other than that, it fits really good, you know, similar to T56. And also, I made my own transmission mount, so I didn't really have to, you know, spend money there. I think I had to buy like a piece of angle iron from Lowe's for $10. That was about it. So another question I get asked is, how about the slave cylinder? Is it the same as a T56? What do you do for a clutch? What do you do for a flywheel? Blah, blah, blah. There's this website called v8s10.org, and there's actually a thread on there where a guy mounted an externally slaved S10 transmission to an LSX motor. This is internally slaved, but the bell housing bolt pattern is the same, so it'll bolt right up. It's just, you won't need the external slave cylinder, you just need the internal slave cylinder. The pressure side of the cylinder from the master cylinder into the slave cylinder is the same as a T56, so you get that little Russell adapter that goes in the T56 and then has an AN3 on the outside, and then that line right there just connects to that fitting, and then that's it, you're done with that. The bleeder is a little bit different story. I had to do some custom work there. So the bleeder on this slave, which is the stock slave cylinder for a 2000 Chevy S10 4.3 5-speed manual, it presses out, or it has a pin that presses out, and then you take out the bleeder fitting, but it's like a 1/4 inch longer than the pressure fitting. So the little Russell adapter that you used on this line in the transmission won't work. So since it's sold in packs of 2, the Russell fitting, what I did was I basically cut that Russell fitting in half. So I had the AN3 side left over, and then I took out the stock bleeder from my slave cylinder, the S10 slave, and I cut it in half, and then I welded the two together. So that way I could put the hexagonal shaped fitting back in the slave cylinder for the bleed, but then it had an AN3 thread welded onto the end of it. So far it's working great. No leaks, at least that I know of. And then I went online and found like a remote bleeder kit. You may be wondering where it is, like where's the little bleeder? Where'd you run it? Can't see it. Well, something that I actually really liked about the remote bleeder is I actually put it right here. So if you take this aluminum panel off, the bleeder is actually like right here, so I can sit in the car and bleed the clutch myself. I don't need any help with that. The company I got it from offers different lengths for the bleeder kit, and I got a 25-inch length, and it fits perfect. There's no hard kinks in the line to get it to that spot. It's just, it is what it is right there. So for the flywheel and clutch setup, pretty simple. the flywheel, I'm pretty sure, is from a 4.8 liter Silverado, I think. I'm pretty sure the part number was NFW 1050. Like I said, I got that from v8s10.org. There's that thread on there with all the information. I can post that. The clutch kit, I forget what it came from. It was some like older Chevy pickup, I'm pretty sure, because it's a 10 spline transmission, so you need the old school clutch disc and pressure plate and whatnot. It's actually technically a high torque clutch kit because it's 6-puck instead of full face, but it was still only like 120 or 130 bucks for the full kit. I mean, if you want, you can probably spend 800 or 900 bucks on an ACT, but that's not necessary, especially with just a stock truck motor. So, you know, I went with the Rock Auto Special, and if it blows a year or two down the line, or, you know, however long I keep the motor stock, then that's fine. It, you know, wasn't too much money. Like I said, just to get it running and driving and start drifting, etc., etc. The slave cylinder, I think, like I already mentioned, it's just the stock S10 slave cylinder. This transmission, I got lucky on this transmission, and it actually came with the slave cylinder in the transmission still, and they just, you know, threw that in there. So as far as the shifter position, I get a lot of questions on, hey, how far forward does the shifter fit on that NV3500? Well, this can hopefully give you an idea. You know, the stock e-brake is still in its stock spot, so hopefully you can get an idea of how far forward it sits. The shift knob, the red ball, is, I actually positioned it very closely, at least to what I remember, as the stock like 240SX shift knob spot. So I mean, it keeps it in a really good spot right there. So if you've got some fab skills, you can just whip up something like this real quick. And actually, if you look right here, these two screws, that top one, if you take that one out and loosen the bottom one, you can actually rotate the entire shifter up or down. There's 3 holes for 3 positions, and I just have it right there because it's most comfortable for me right now. So the drive shaft I had custom made. Luckily, when I bought this transmission, it came with like the input yoke on the S10 drive shaft cut off and left in the transmission, so I was able to bring that to the drive shaft shop and say, hey, I need this end to go to a Nissan end, and then they built me a drive shaft. I think center of U-joint to center of U-joint is about 39.5 inches, but your swap, you know, if you do use the NV3500, your swap may differ a little bit, so you might have to measure it yourself when you get it in. And that was about 300 bucks, but you know, it's a brand new drive shaft, really good quality. I can reuse the joints if I need to in the future for another swap or something. So for the fuel system, I already had this fuel cell, and I already had that Walbro external 255 fuel pump, so I didn't factor those into the cost of this swap. You know, you probably have a gas tank in your car, so you won't need that, but you might need a fuel pump. I mean, it's only like 100 bucks if you get the whole, you know, 240SX drop-in kit or whatever, if I remember correctly. I already had this pressure regulator, so I didn't factor that in, although I did have to buy that gauge. That was about 25 bucks. So basically, I've got the fuel pumping through a fuel filter into the fuel pressure regulator, and then on the right side, that line right there goes all the way, follows the frame up to the motor. And then we have this AN line, which is the return line, coming up back into the fuel cell. And this is just like a stock 240SX fuel pump housing that I dropped in this tank. I made this adapter. So another thing worth mentioning is it really comes in handy to have or have access to a lift. Even if you have to pay to like rent one for the few days that you would need it or whatever, definitely do it. I know with this motor, it was way easier to attach the front subframe to it and then like lower the car onto the motor pretty much. That was definitely the easiest way to do it for me. That's probably going to be the easiest way to take the motor out, is to detach the subframe and the front suspension and then lift the car up around the motor. So some final thoughts. like I said in the beginning, it was about 3,700 grand total for everything installed and running and driving and everything. I highly suggest having your own welder, like a nice, good MIG welder. I've got a Lincoln 140C, and I think I paid about $1,000 for that full setup: the welder, the cart, the tank, the helmet, the gloves, the wire, everything. And trust me, it's already paid for itself at least 5 times over. That's how much money I've saved, like doing anything that I want to in my shop because I have a welder. And you may be thinking, oh, an extra $1,000, that's a lot. Well, $3,700 for a swap plus $1,000 for a welding outfit, that's $4,700. That's still pretty damn cheap. It's way cheaper than buying an LS for $2,000, buying a T56 for at least $1,500, buying a swap kit for $3,000, and then still buying all the odds and ends, which is probably another at least $500. I don't know, but I mean, you can do what you want. This is how I did it.